My neighbor put up a giant "No Trespassing" sign after my nephew's ball rolled into his yard. The next day, my nephew's bike was gone. I knew who took it. I waited until 3 a.m., then left something on their porch that made their dog bark for 3 straight hours. They still haven't figured it out. I live in a small neighborhood in McMinnville, Oregon. It's mostly older folks and a few families. The kind of place where people rake leaves into neat piles and know your name after the second time you wave. It was peaceful when I moved here 2 years ago, after my divorce. I wanted something quiet, somewhere stable. My sister and I are close, and every summer she lets her son, Daniel, come stay with me for a couple weeks. It's kind of become our thing. He's a good kid, quiet but sharp. He asks real questions like, why do some people yell when they're scared? Stuff like that. This summer, everything was fine until the Crawfords moved in next door. Jack and Lorraine Crawford bought the house in October. Retired couple. They didn't say much when they moved in. I brought over a pie the first week, just to be neighborly. Jack opened the door, looked at the pie like I was trying to poison him, and just said, "We don't eat sugar." "No thank you." "No welcome." Just shut the door. I didn't take it personally. Some people are like that. But over time I noticed things. Jack mowed his lawn every 3 days like it was a ritual. He'd stop and stare if someone walked too close to his curb. He glared at kids on scooters. Lorraine wasn't much better, always peeking through the blinds like she was keeping tabs on everyone. They weren't friendly. Not cruel exactly, but tight. Cold. Still, I didn't have any real problem with them. Until the sign. Daniel had been with me for 4 days. It was a hot Tuesday afternoon. He was outside tossing a rubber ball and riding his bright green bike up and down the cul-de-sac. He always stayed close. Careful kid. But at one point, the ball bounced weird and rolled into the Crawfords' front yard. Just a few feet. He jogged over, picked it up, and came back. Maybe 5 seconds. The next morning, I walked outside to get the paper and nearly choked on my coffee. A massive red and white sign was staked right on the edge of the Crawfords' lawn, pointed directly at our house. No trespassing. Private property. Do not enter. It wasn't a little sign. It looked like something you'd see at a military base. Shiny, thick, like they had it made just for this. It hadn't been there the night before. I stood there staring at it. I didn't say anything. I didn't knock on their door or ask why. I figured maybe it was their way of sending a message. Fine. That night, Daniel left his bike outside, like always. We were sitting in the living room watching TV, and I remember asking if he locked it. He said, "It's under the steps, no one's gonna take it." Next morning, we came outside, and the bike was gone. No scratch marks. No tire tracks. Just gone. Like someone reached under and lifted it out. I checked the ring cam. Nothing. The footage only covered the driveway. I knocked on a few doors, asked around. Nobody saw anything. I called the police and filed a report. They were polite but not hopeful. Bikes disappear all the time, the officer said. Probably some teenager grabbed it and took off. But I knew better. 3 days later, I was out back watering the garden. Their side shed, the one that sits next to their backyard fence, was cracked open. It's always locked, always shut. But this time, the door was hanging slightly ajar. I tried not to stare, but I saw something inside. A flash of green. A tire. Then a handlebar. It was Daniel's bike. I walked up to the fence and leaned a little closer. No doubt about it, same green frame, same white grips. I stood there a full minute, trying to stay calm. Then I knocked on their front door. Jack answered after a long pause. He only opened the door a couple inches. I said, "I think you have my nephew's bike in your shed." He blinked slowly. "What bike?" "The green one. The one that was under our porch 2 nights ago. I saw it in your shed just now." He didn't even look surprised. Just tilted his head and said, "You got proof?" That's all he said. Then he shut the door. I stood there in disbelief. I could have kicked the door in. I could have called the cops again. I didn't. I just walked back to my house, burning with rage. Daniel was sitting on the steps. He looked up at me. Was it really in there? He asked. I nodded.
Yeah.
It's in there. He didn't say anything else. He just stared at the fence. And that was the moment I decided I wasn't letting this go. That night, I could barely sleep. Every creak of the floorboard sounded like someone sneaking a bike out again. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking of what to do next. I told myself I'm not stooping to their level, but I also couldn't just wait for the police to sort it out. They'd probably dump the bike somewhere if we filed another report. So I planned. I waited 3 nights for the right moment. I picked a clear, moonless Tuesday at midnight. No one around. I grabbed my small Bluetooth speaker, nothing fancy, just a cheap one I had in the garage, and loaded a recording I made earlier. A dog whine turning into frantic barking. The kind of relentless noise that cuts right through you. I crept out the door, carried the speaker to their porch, checked the layout, saw their terrier sleeping inside through the window. It jumped awake when I clipped the speaker beneath a flower pot. I angled it so the sound would echo inward. I pressed play and walked away, hands shaking, heart pounding, adrenaline pouring in. Within seconds, the dog started barking, first low, then loud, then uncontrolled. I hid around the corner, listening. It didn't stop. It barked, yipped, scratched at windows. Every few minutes a light turned on inside. Footsteps. Doors opening, voices. Nothing changed. I stood there for 3 hours, until my speaker died and the noise stopped. I slipped home before sunrise. Next week, I heard from my neighbor across the street. He said, "Did you hear that dog all night?" I thought someone broke in. I just nodded. That didn't stop me. I did it again the next night, same time, same plan. And the next night after that. 3 nights in a row. By the last night, the Crawfords looked haggard. I saw them pacing in the yard at dawn, tense, frustrated. Their dog was whimpering by the fence, not barking anymore. Too drained. Then came the twist. On the evening after the 3rd night, I was fixing dinner when I noticed a small envelope by our front step. It was propped up in plain sight, no stamp, no note inside. Just a folded piece of paper with one line in thin, even writing. "You're next." Under it, someone had scribbled a crooked smiley face. I felt my blood run cold. I looked out the window. No one visible. I picked up the paper, heart pounding. My nephew was at the table, eating spaghetti. He looked at me, eyebrows raised. I shoved the note in my pocket, said nothing. Something had changed. Now I wasn't just watching them. They were watching me. And whoever left that note didn't call the cops. They knew what I did. They felt it. They were planning their own move. I realized then, I had woken something. It wasn't just about the bike anymore. It wasn't even about the noise. It was about power, and we were both in it. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling again, now with fear. Because before the bike came back, there were other signs. I kept the note hidden, didn't tell Daniel. He was already a little jumpy from all the barking, and I didn't want him feeling unsafe at my place. But something had definitely shifted. It wasn't just about the bike or the dog noise anymore. It felt personal now. 2 nights after the note, I noticed something strange. I came home from work around 6 p.m. My trash bins had been moved. Not tipped, just dragged a few feet to the edge of my yard, like someone wanted me to notice. That same night, one of the motion lights by my garage started flickering nonstop. I checked the wiring. Nothing wrong. Then my back gate was left open. Each thing by itself wouldn't mean much. But all together, it felt deliberate. Like someone wanted me on edge, watching, guessing. I started checking windows twice, locking the doors in a pattern I hadn't done since the divorce, when I thought my ex might come back drunk. I stopped sleeping through the night. My chest would tighten every time I heard footsteps outside, and not just imagined ones. Real ones. Someone walked past my window at 4:10 a.m. on Thursday. I checked the security cam after sunrise. Just a blur in the dark. No clear face, no car. Daniel picked up on it. "Kids do. Why don't we ride bikes today?" he asked. "Let's stay close today," I said. We can play cards or watch a movie. He didn't push, but I saw him glance at the porch. He noticed his bike was still there, right where it had been dropped off quietly in the night. Then Friday came. I got a call from the property manager of our HOA. She sounded uneasy. "We received a complaint," she said, "about your behavior. Someone said you've been making noise at all hours and harassing your neighbors." "Who?" I asked. "I'm not allowed to say. But they said you've been causing disturbances late at night, specifically targeting their home." I didn't respond. I just hung up. That same evening, when I came back from picking up groceries, something was spray-painted on the back of my fence. "Stay quiet." White paint, dripping. Fresh. Not visible from the street. Only someone who knew exactly how my yard was laid out would know how to place it there. I scrubbed it off before Daniel saw it. I still hadn't confronted Jack. I hadn't knocked, but part of me wanted to, just to get it over with. Instead, I started watching. I bought a cheap pair of binoculars from the hardware store. Spent nights staring through the slats of my blinds, waiting for movement, watching shadows. I wanted proof, something I could act on. Then on Sunday night, 1 week after the note, I heard something behind the shed. A scraping. A short thud. I grabbed my phone and tiptoed outside. Quiet, slow, barefoot. I crept toward the sound, trying not to breathe too loud. I could hear it clearly now, metal dragging against wood. Something shifting. Someone was behind the shed, crouched down, doing something. I turned the corner fast, flashlight out, phone camera rolling. And there he was. Jack. Bent over. Holding what looked like a crowbar. Near the fence between our yards. He froze. Then he stood up slowly, like nothing was wrong. I asked, "What the hell are you doing?" He smiled, a weird, fake smile. "Just checking my property lines." "At 1 a.m? "Got a problem with that?" he said. I didn't answer. I just recorded him walking back to his porch, tool in hand. He didn't look back. And I knew then he wasn't done. Not even close. The next day, I called a surveyor. If Jack wanted to play games about property lines, I was going to get the truth on paper. I didn't even care about the few inches of land between our fences. I wanted something solid to shove in his face the next time he wandered near my shed with a crowbar. The surveyor came out 2 days later, walked the edges, took notes. He was polite but firm when he handed me the report. "Your fence is well within your property." His shed, though, he pointed to the corner where our yards meet. "His structure crosses about 16 inches into your lot." I stared at the paper. "You're sure?" "Completely. 16 inches. Probably didn't mean much legally. But it meant everything emotionally. I made a copy of the survey report, circled the shed, and slipped it under Jack's door. No note. No threats. Just that. That night was quiet. Too quiet. No barking. No sounds. No lights on next door. I didn't like it. The next morning, I found a dead squirrel nailed to my mailbox post. It was stiff. Its eyes were gone. I gagged. I've lived alone for years, seen some dark things during the worst parts of my marriage, but this hit me in a different place. Whoever did this wanted it to stay in my head. And it worked. I yanked it down, threw it in a trash bag, didn't say a word to Daniel. Just told him the mail would be delayed that day. I thought about calling the cops again. But what would I say? My neighbor left a dead animal near my house because I exposed his illegal shed placement. Instead, I decided to switch tactics. If Jack wanted to escalate, I'd match him. Quietly. Strategically. That night, I climbed onto my roof. From there, I had a clean view into their backyard. Not illegal, not trespassing. Just watching. Their shed lights were on. I took pictures. Then I saw something that made me grip the shingles harder. Inside the shed, just behind the tool rack, was a board with photos pinned to it. Not many, maybe 3 or 4. But one of them was unmistakable. Me. Standing at my own back door. Taken from somewhere low, like behind a bush. Another looked like Daniel, on his bike, paused near the mailbox. Grainy, but clear enough. I nearly fell getting off that roof. I spent the next hour pacing the kitchen, debating. I didn't have hard proof they took the photos. but I knew. So, I printed out one of the roof pictures, a clear shot of their photo board. Then I circled the pinned image of me. Wrote one word across the page in black marker. Why? Then, just before dawn, I left it taped to their shed door. I watched from my window as Jack found it. He didn't rip it down. He didn't react. He just stood there for a long time. Then he looked up directly at my window and smiled. I started sleeping in 2-hour bursts. Every noise made me sit up. I moved a chair next to the front window and kept watch from 1 a.m. to 4 a.m. just in case he tried something again. I started keeping a baseball bat by the door. Not because I planned to use it, but because not having it made me feel helpless. And then something new happened. Daniel came inside one afternoon, holding a small folded piece of paper. His face looked pale. "I found this under my bike's seat," he said. I took it from him, hands already shaking. It was a photocopy of one of the photos from their shed, the one of him near the mailbox. Someone had drawn a big red X through his head. That's all it had. No words. No threats. Just that. I didn't say anything. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the station. I told the officer everything. The shed, the bike, the trespassing, the photos. I showed them the dead squirrel picture. The survey report. The photocopy Daniel found. They took it more seriously this time. Said they'd look into it. Promised a patrol car would pass through more often. But I could tell, unless Jack slipped up big, they weren't going to act. It was all too quiet. Too in between. So I stopped playing defense. That weekend, I installed my own motion cameras. 3 total, front, back, side. All wired. All backed up. I set one directly on the property line facing their shed. The red light blinked. No hiding it. I knew they saw it. Because that night, the lights in the shed stayed off for the first time in weeks. I kept waiting for a move. But nothing came. Then Tuesday morning, the HOA sent a letter. Formal complaint. Claimed I'd been installing surveillance equipment aimed at private residences, and that it was a form of intimidation. I went numb. I knew where it came from. That afternoon, I drove to the city records office. I paid for a full background report on the Crawfords' property. And there it was, buried in the permit history, a denied request to expand the shed by 2 feet, dated a year before I moved in. Denied. But the shed was extended anyway. That gave me what I needed. Not revenge. Not a fight. Leverage. I sent a copy of the permit violation to the HOA, with the surveyor's report attached. 2 days later, they opened an investigation into the Crawfords' property. And that's when things finally cracked. Lorraine came to my door. First time ever. She stood there with shaking hands, no makeup, pale. "You need to stop," she said. Not angry, more like scared. Stop what? I asked. She didn't answer. Just said, "Jack's not well. He hasn't been for years. You don't understand what you're doing." Then she turned and walked back. I stood there for a long time, the door still open, thinking about what she said. And for the first time since this whole thing began, I wasn't sure who was actually in control anymore. Lorraine's visit rattled me. Not because of what she said, but how she said it. "You don't understand what you're doing." It wasn't a threat. It was something else. A warning. Or maybe a confession. That night, I couldn't shake it. I kept replaying her voice, her face, over and over. Was Jack dangerous in ways I hadn't guessed? Or was this just another trick? Another part of their weird back-and-forth game? Then something else happened. Daniel came into the living room holding an old photo album from my bookshelf. He'd pulled it down by accident. "Can I look at this?" he asked. "Sure," I said, distracted. I was barely listening, until he turned to the 4th page. "Hey, isn't that your old truck?" he asked. I looked over, and froze. In the photo, taken 3 years ago in front of my sister's house, there I was, standing next to my pickup. And in the background, down the street, Jack Crawford, just walking his dog. Clear as day. I took the photo from Daniel and stared at it. The date on the back confirmed it, March 15th, 2022. I hadn't moved to McMinnville until October of that year. My stomach dropped. I flipped through more pages, slower now, looking past the main subjects. Backgrounds, faces, shapes. And there he was again. A church event, a parking lot, a grainy figure near the fence. Same baseball cap, same dog. Jack. Watching. I checked 6 different photos. All from different places, different years. 2 from my sister's town. 1 from a park we visited in Portland. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't just bad neighbor luck. This man had been near my family, around me, for years before he ever bought the house next door. I didn't know what the hell I was looking at. I pulled out the records I had printed from the city's property database. Found the address history for the Crawfords. Their last listed home? Some rural property outside Eugene. No connection to my old neighborhood. No obvious link. But those photos, they didn't lie. I stayed up until 4 a.m. reading every local article I could find. Anything with the name Crawford. Nothing turned up. Nothing solid. Until I searched his full name. Jack Marvin Crawford. A single article. Dated 1999. Buried behind a paywall. Title: Local man questioned in child endangerment case. No charges filed. I paid to read the full thing. The story was vague. No details. Said he was investigated after numerous reports of uninvited contact with minors in public spaces. Claimed he frequented playgrounds and youth centers without clear reason. Eventually cleared, no charges. Case closed. That was over 2 decades ago. But now he lived next to my nephew. And that's when I knew this wasn't revenge anymore. This was protection. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor with all the photos spread out like puzzle pieces. My hands kept going back to that one image, the one with Daniel on his bike and Jack in the background, blurry but watching. Always watching. By sunrise, I'd made a decision. I told my sister everything. I didn't show her all the photos, just enough. The photo of Jack in the background from 2 towns over. The creepy red X on the copy Daniel found. The newspaper article from '99. I told her about the shed, the stalking, the bike. I left out the speaker trick. I didn't want her thinking I was unstable. I needed her to take me seriously. She was silent the whole time. Then she said, "I'm coming to get him. Today." She didn't ask. She told me. Daniel didn't say much when I explained. Just nodded and said, "Okay." But I could tell he didn't understand why he had to leave so fast. He was quiet as he packed. I told him he could leave his bike. We'd bring it next time. But he didn't want to. He made me help him fit it in the trunk. My sister pulled into the driveway by noon. Didn't even look toward the Crawford house. She hugged me, told me to keep the photos, and drove off with her windows up and her doors locked. I stood in the driveway after they left. It felt hollow. Quiet. Too quiet. That night, around 10:30 p.m., I took my flashlight and walked back toward the shared fence line. I wanted to see the shed again. I wanted one last look before I decided what to do next. But something was wrong. The shed door was gone. Not just open, gone. Removed from the hinges. Leaning against a tree like it had been taken down hours ago. Inside the shed, empty. Completely cleared out. No tools. No photos. No bike. Not even shelves. I stepped back, scanning their yard. That's when I saw him. Jack. Sitting alone in a lawn chair near the back corner, facing the fence. No lights. No drink. Just sitting there. His face was lit only by the faint porch glow from my side. He looked at me, eyes locked on mine, and mouthed something. I couldn't hear it. I said, "What?" He didn't answer. Just mouthed it again, slower. Then he stood up, walked inside, and shut the door. I stayed frozen for a full minute. Then I walked back into my house, locked everything, and didn't move. It took me a long time to admit what he said. For words. Mouthed twice, never spoken out loud. This isn't over yet. A week passed. Then 2. No more photos. No more dead animals. No letters. Nothing strange left on my porch. Jack didn't come outside anymore. The shed stayed empty. No lights. No barking. Even the HOA stopped sending letters. From the outside, it looked like it was over. But I couldn't settle. I kept the blinds drawn. I still checked the security cams every morning just to make sure nothing had changed in the night. I updated the cloud storage. I checked the shed photo every day, the one I'd taken from the roof. Sometimes I stared at it so long it felt like the whole house was watching me. I'd started seeing a therapist by then. I told her bits and pieces, just enough to explain the insomnia and the hypervigilance. She said, "It sounds like you experienced something violating. That takes time to process." I didn't argue, but that word violating didn't quite cover it. Because this didn't feel like something that happened. It felt like something that opened and stayed open. Then last Friday, I got a voicemail. Blocked number. Woman's voice. No name. She said, "You did the right thing getting the boy out of there. He picks kids he thinks won't speak up. You weren't supposed to see him in those photos. He slipped. He's slipping." That was it. 12 seconds. No callback option. No more messages. I saved the audio. Ran it through a number tracker. Got nothing. Just another dead end in a story full of them. I don't know who she was. I don't know what she meant by picks kids. I don't even know if it was real. But it felt like someone telling me, you were never supposed to fight back. You weren't part of the plan. And that's what's keeping me up now. Because if I wasn't part of the plan, maybe Daniel was. I still have the photo. The one with Jack in the background before I ever knew his name. Sometimes I catch myself staring at it like it'll move, like he'll blink or turn. I don't live next to him anymore. I sold the house a few months after that call. But I still find myself checking back sometimes, just to see if the property went up for sale. It hasn't. The shed's still there. Empty, maybe. Or maybe not. I don't think I'll ever know for sure. But the worst part is, I can't stop thinking about how many other photo albums he's in. Ones where no one's ever looked past the edges.